Hi, today I'm talking with Ester Daniel. We talked about the advantages of programming with limited visibility, how they can change their mind and no longer be wrong, and why they prefer legacy code.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello with me, I have Esther Daniel. Welcome.
Thank you.
And when I say welcome and here, I want to show a little bit on where we are. And actually, I should put that I actually see it when I'm doing this. This is something I screwed up. My second screen doesn't work, but I'm here, and it shows me in Belgium. And let's move where you are, and you're in Sweden, if I'm correct, in Malmo. Is this how I
Mhm.
should pronounce it?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, my daughter is back 2 days from being to Sweden, so she really loves the country. She went with her school this week or last week, I should put it. So I heard a lot about your country in the last couple of days, so that was already interesting. So welcome here. And when we talk about here tonight, at this moment, it's a little bit after 5 o'clock in Belgium. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the same time zone in Sweden. Is this correct?
Yeah. It's the same time
So
zone.
although we have lots of miles or kilometers away, we still are in the same time zone. That's a little bit. I want to also bring it because it's with people all over the world. We sometimes don't always realize it's sometimes far away, but a different time zone. Sometimes it's close, and it's always different kind of thing. But for the
Mhm.
people that don't know you, could you say a little bit who you are before we jump into the questions? What do you want people to know about you?
I'm a software developer doing Salmon Technical Agile coaching. I know you've spoken to Emily Beige. I'm part of her society. Um, yeah, it's a Salmon society. It's awesome. I started writing software, and then I figured out that the biggest problem was not the code, but all the things around it. And I wanted to solve it, so I learned a lot of stuff from awesome people and wanted to implement it. And it was not always welcome when I was part of a
Mm.
team. So now I'm trying to do coaching instead so that people opt in for my advice instead of having to live with it. Um, so yeah. Uh,
That's already an interesting thing. If you're part of a team and sometimes you bring in ideas, if people are not ready, then it's really hard. I recognize that a lot. And when you're an outsider and people actually come to you for advice and come to listen, it's much easier for them to
yeah.
listen to you, I would say. Is that
Yeah. And
smart that you
sometimes
realize that?
and sometimes you need a break from change. So
Mm.
that is also a good thing that um, if it's hard for me to take a break from improvement, working with multiple teams is a chance for them to get used to what I taught them, see if it works, see what they need more help with, um, contemplate on their own, and then I can come back. It's part of the Saman method as well that you work with the team for a couple of weeks or once a week, or yeah, it should be air between to digest it, and I like that format.
Yeah, it's true. I think this is really important indeed when people need time to digest it. I've learned that years and years ago when I was doing sports. What is it? Table tennis, and I was doing some kind of camp. And the week afterwards, I was really shitty. I I couldn't do anything that I've learned, and I was like, why did I even go there? And why did I even learn it? Because it didn't help me. It is only later that I realized, or that I was taught, actually, Eve, you need some time to digest it, and then only later on it will bring in. But I was so frustrated. I still remember my first match after that camp. I was shitty. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do what I did before, and I couldn't do what I learned. And I was like, what? Why did I even try learning something new? But what you say makes, now that I'm so much older, it makes so much more sense. You need time to digest it, and even if you practice it, and I thought I practiced it well at that camp, but that's also full time. You're busy with that, and then you go home, and then whatever, you do some other stuff, and then the first time you actually need to use it and apply it in the real world, like we call it, it didn't work. And it was just that I didn't have time to adjust to that, and to absorb it, like you said so nicely.
Yeah.
So that's already a very good tip and a very good thing to tell people. And so what I'm hearing is that you like to work with different teams, and then when they need some time, you just go to another team and another, and they will call you back when they're ready for the next step. Is that a little bit
Yeah.
how I?
Yeah, and one of the things you said about using things in the real life, one of the common things is that you work in production code together with the team. So I'm taking courses in software development, and then I came back to my team, and half of the team who went with me were like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever. We have to do this," and the rest were like, I don't know. And I was like, but I'm going to explain to you. I remember half of it. And then I wasn't really convincing. So most of the
Because
things
you
you
forgot the
learn.
other half.
Yeah, you can't really bring everything with you, because then you would have been
Right.
able to be the teacher.
Yeah.
So taking a course and then being able to teach it, it's not the same thing. So when you send half of the team away to learn something and then hope that they will be able to bring it back, especially if it's a bit controversial or something that is new for the people. I think that's hard. And you can always then have the counter argument that, oh, but this won't work in our code. We can't do this. But if you have
We're
a code,
special.
yeah, we're special. Everyone's special. Yeah. And then you read Accelerate and you see that all teams need the same things. Anyway, so, but if you work in their code, there are two advantages. They can't say it doesn't work in our code. And I can look at their code and see, okay, they need this. And so instead of teaching a lot of stuff that is not applicable, they can explain their pains, and I can look at the code and I can suggest things that they learn, and we can try it out together. They can prove me wrong if I am wrong, which is a really good thing. I can learn, but I can also then adapt what I teach from the reality.
And so the whole argument, we are special, goes away, because the moment that they're special and that indeed your advice doesn't work, you will learn, and they don't have to tell you. You can see for yourself, basically. And the moment that they think you were special and you still know that it works and you try it out with them and it works, that argument goes away as well. So that's
Or they tell
helpful.
me that I'm wrong. I admit that I'm wrong. I'm changed my mind, and then I'm not wrong anymore. So I only have to be wrong a very short time. And then we move on.
That's a nice thing. Of course, when I, for example, when I do presentations at conferences, I stopped talking, or not stopped, but I minimize the number of examples I give about work. I usually give my examples from a personal point of view, from my children, from my family life, or something else, business life, or whatever. And I tell people that up front, like, look, I'm not going to give you business example, because every time I give you one from development or whatever, you will tell me that you're special and it doesn't apply to you. So I say, I give you a personal one, and I assume that you're adult and smart enough to apply and find where it works and where it doesn't work, and find your own examples. And I've learned over the years that really helpful, because it forces people to stop being in the I'm special, but more in like, where could it apply to me? and that works. Of course, that is your solution is even better if you can do it with code, which is different if you're in a presentation, of course, or at least that's how it feels to me. But it's a different way to deal with the same problem, because I think it's a real problem. Everybody feels that they're special, and they are in their own worldview, they are special. But what they don't realize is that we have similar kind of special things that we've seen, and so we're all special in the same way. In a way, that's and like you said it, like in Accelerate, that's explained very nicely.
Yeah, but still, the DevOps report, they state that they can't say start here, because where you need to start is different for each team. The end goal is the same, but what's the biggest pain point right now? That's something the development team themselves know, and perhaps the code will also tell us if we ask it.
Yeah, I really like that you stressed that, because I've been asked that question not so long ago for another podcast, where the person asked me, like, if where do you want to start with the team? It's like, well, I can't tell you. Well, the answer I can give you is I start with the team where they are, and then we'll move on. I can't just say I always start with this or with that, because in reality, we almost never start with the greenfield team. We start with a team that existing has some code. Okay, in the rare occasion that there would be a completely new team with new code, I can invent something, but even that, it will be different what I would do now than I would do in 10 years or in 5 years, because we moved on and we learned through other stuff. So even there, my answer would not be applicable probably in 6 months. So yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because we really need to start with the team. And that's, I think, what you're describing in the method from Emily and everybody that is there is indeed so much with, we start with where we are, we start with the code, we start looking into it with the people. They will tell us, that's how I feel it anyway, they will tell us what's their biggest problem. We'll together look into that. I might discover other stuff, and that's how we move on. That's a little bit what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah. And that is also one of the reasons why I like legacy code. It's full of information. It's something to work with instead of having to make all the guesses from start and make all the new mistakes. You can use the data that's already there. You can see, okay, what is hard in describing this domain in a good way. Instead of like, yeah.
I really like the way you put that, because usually most people say, I prefer to work in greenfield and start. But first of all, that's almost never possible. But on top, indeed, you miss so much information from the people you're working with. You don't know what are their strengths. You don't know what's the business domain. And if you start with legacy code, you get so much information. So basically, it's kind of, yeah, I like that. I've never thought about it this way. So thank you for sharing that, because, oh, I'm already learning a lot. So we haven't even started and I'm already learning a lot. So thank you very well.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Is there something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, another thing with legacy code is that greenfield code will turn into legacy code. So starting with the legacy code within the team, teaching them how to work well in a legacy system is what they will need in the end anyway.
Oh yeah, it's something I like to tell a lot of people, is that the people that usually wants to work most with the greenfield code are the people who are not able to clean up their own mess. And actually what they need most is to learn to clean up a messy thing. And once they're used to that, we don't need that much the greenfield thing. And there's so many developers, yeah, let me start all over, and then they start all over, and 6 months later, or probably earlier, they have the same kind of mess. It's like, yeah, let's move to a new house so I don't need to clean up my house. Yeah, maybe that doesn't work.
Yeah, but the legacy code rock community talks about makers and menders. And I think there might be a place for makers when you need to quickly get something out. but I prefer working with menders.
And what about why do you prefer that? Do you have any reason why do you prefer that?
I think it fits me better with things that are hard. Like, yeah, I think you should start asking me questions because
Yeah, okay, let's
there's answers in these
and
answers are also answers to your coming questions because you showed them to
yeah,
me. So
I agree. I was thinking while I was asking extra questions, I was thinking like probably some of these things we're going to jump into that. So indeed, let's start with that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, and but that has influenced you and who you are?
when in my late teens, early 20s, I lost half of my vision.
Wow.
That's something that people who know it also sometimes forget because you can't always tell. But it affects me a lot in different ways. It's inherited, so genetic, and my optical nerve is broken. So the lenses work, the processors work, the cable is not working. And I have like half vision, 1/3, like those letters that you read on the board. I can see the 3 to 5 top rows. So when writing software, I use a lot of inch screen like someone uses a laptop, and my laptop is more like a phone to me when it comes to screen size. And it makes a lot of things hard, like reading printed books. I almost stopped doing that. And yeah, reading with my eyes is, it takes time and it makes me really tired because my brain does all the image processing. So I don't really see the holes in the image because my brain is doing a lot of guesswork. Sometimes it guesses right, not always. So I get really, really tired. But
And
it's
does
also
that
good.
impact the rest of your life? Like, for example, are you able to drive and or bicycle and stuff like that, or is that dangerous, or how should I see that?
Yes. I biked a while, then I stopped for everyone's safety. I also have ADHD. So the distracted part of ADHD and the low vision part of my visual impairment together says no biking, especially not in like biking cities where there's a lot of biking going on and cars and stuff. No. And I'm not allowed to drive. I hadn't taken my driver's license when I lost my eyesight, so I could use that money to go to therapy instead, which was really good. But yeah, it affects me. And I have
And
to
that
remember.
also means that you are dependent for large movements, I would say, that you always need a taxi or other people driving you around, or how should I see it?
There's a lot of public commute where I live, so I can go by bus or train. I also picked a place to live that is very, very close to everything. I also walk a lot, like 30,000 steps in a day is not uncommon. And that is also good for my ADHD. So, and I listen to books while walking or podcasts or, so I get a lot of audiobook time in a week if I'm focused enough while walking to actually listen. But it affects me. But it also affects how I write code, I think. My optimal editor window is 80 characters wide and 20 lines high.
Wow. I don't know what it is with me, but it's definitely different. That's for sure. It's and but that also means if you would need to pair with other people that you can't just sit to another person's computer and read what's on the screen. I think that sounds like impossible, or am I wrong there?
It works, but that people when I pair with colleagues a lot, they usually have different font settings for me, so they switch their scheme. When I do coaching, I've done most of it remote, and then I can zoom on my screen to see what they're doing. But
right. And so wait, I'm trying to also grasp a little bit. If you if I go too deep, you need to tell me. Yeah. But if you work remotely, does that also mean if you want to show your screen that you might see something different on your screen that what they see remotely because you work with screen settings, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think that people react on my font being big, but what I show is then mostly like sample code, which shouldn't be that much anyway, because who wants to read a lot of code? I want to have as precise example as possible.
Right.
Slides, you shouldn't have a lot of text on them anyway.
No.
Like,
So
so
your whole life, I would say, your body kind of forces you to work in a way that's actually very good for a lot of people, but most people don't realize it because, like you say, there's a lot of people who prefer lots of text on a slide. That's really bad for, I think, everybody in the world. And it just won't work for you. So you, as a presenter, would just normally work differently. That's how I hear, right?
my screensaver kicked in. Wait a
Oops,
second.
no problem.
And that illustrated one of my problems. And that is if I'm stressed and want to type my very long password, I dive into my keyboard to be sure that I push the right keys. And then I disappear from camera.
Mm-hmm. Which is like we discussed before, it should really feel like a normal conversation. So if that's your life, it actually shows it very well. It might be strange to people, but that's part of your day-to-day life. I hear. So yeah, well, nice is the wrong word, but it's good to visualize that to people, that people realize, because indeed, if you've never worked with a person who has that I don't know how to call it. I wouldn't even call
Visual
it a handicap.
impairment.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's really it's I call it really, it's like, yeah, your body is doing something differently when most people, but it also gives you advantages, like you say, like we were just discussing, the fact that it forces you to have slides that are better, the fact that it forces you to not show 3,000 lines of code when you want to do this is good. It's actually good, but indeed I can't tell the number of times I've seen code on an editor which is too much code, and then the person is talking, and it takes me like 5 minutes to figure out on what line are you talking about, and by that time this person has moved on, and I didn't understand what this person was talking about. With you have limited code on your screen because that your body forces you to do that, but it helps me as an audience to know, okay, you're talking about that piece of code, so it's actually good for everyone.
Yeah. And
So
it
that's
makes
why I
me
didn't
write
want to.
code different.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, because I want 80 rows, 20 lines. And that is supposed to be a unit. And that is the
Which
Sunday
creates.
Maths guidelines for Ruby.
It's interesting because indeed there's a lot of people talking about, okay, our method should not be too long and should be certain kind of ways. And again, your body, and this is why I didn't just want to say, okay, visual impairment. It's really about, it has an advantage also, and that you, or at least you discovered over the years how it helps you, and what you need to do to make it work for you and for the people that you're working with. So thanks for sharing that. That's definitely something that's influenced in who you are. Probably many people know, but interestingly enough, we did have some interaction that at some points remotely, I would say, on the internet, and I didn't know because we didn't actually work together. So that is interesting in that sense, that not many people know if we haven't actually seen each other working or some kind of thing. So thanks for sharing that.
And even people who know me and know about it tend to forget. I got a white stick for the first time a couple of years ago, and to have when I need it. I don't need it all the time. But when practicing with it, taking walks with my best friend, she started treating me differently.
Wow.
She's known me my whole life, but it was first when I had the stick to remind the world and her that I'm visually impaired that she actively acted to help me in my surroundings. So yeah.
And it at when I hear she acted differently, I have both the negative and the positive feeling. So it's good that you finally acknowledge where you need help, and at the same time it also feels like, wait a minute, why do you start to, so is there anything, is there both sides, or is it just one side of
Yeah, in that case it was only funny to see what a difference the stick makes, because the purpose of it is to signal that I don't see people, I don't see cars, I don't. So I usually use it mainly when there's a lot of light and I can't use my contact lenses. So I'm blue-eyed, but I have sunglasses in my lenses, in my contacts. So when I can't use them and it's sunny outside, I can basically lose all my sight. So I needed to have a stick and be able to use it. And I also use it in situations where it's important that people understand that I can't see fully, like when commuting with public transport and switching trains. If asking for directions, I use it when contacting like government people, official meetings where it's good that they know that they can't just hand me a bunch of documents. Yeah.
And is that because you have lost only part of your sight, so you can still see a little bit? Is that strange for people when you have a stick and at the same time you can still see a little bit? Is that no?
There are two kinds of white sticks. One that is used for navigation and one that is mainly used for signaling. You can use it to aid in navigation as well. I use it also to when it's dark outside and icy, but also wet. I can use it to figure out if that's a puddle or ice in front of me, to approach it differently.
When you say there's two kind of sticks, it's part to signal it, but people like me, I don't know the difference. So is that important? We could know it, or should it?
I think you can see that they are used differently. Like this one that you move like this to trace where you're going. That's one kind of stick. The one I'm using, I hold still to the ground and only move it when I use stairs, basically. And the one I have is thinner with a smaller knob, and the other ones are bigger with an enforced knob at the end.
So if I would be more careful when I see people using these kind of sticks, I can know this is a person that still sees a little bit, and this is a person that completed it. That's yeah, it's incredible. I'm 50 years old and I'm learning this now. I should have learned it when I was 10. When we learn about this, is something that should be taught in school about. Hey, this is differently. It tells you something. It's really important. So thank you for taking the time to explain it here. I think it's really important that people learn about that. To that kind of thing. And I want to zoom a little bit. I don't want to take too much time on it, but I want to zoom a little bit on when you talked about your friend. You said it's funny. Did you also discuss it with your friend? Like, hey, do you realize that you're treating me differently? What did it's a her? Eh? Did she realize that?
Yeah, I think she realized it, and that we both found it curious, but it was also informative for me because if she, who knows me really, really well, forgets, then I must be more cautious, because
Everybody
I can't
will
count
forget.
on other people remembering that I don't really see everything. Yeah.
It's really, really important. I have another friend that has a similar kind of problem with hearing, and she has a hearing aid, but that's even less visible than a stick. So she really sometimes tells, I really have to remind people, hey, this is the ear that I hear a little bit, this is the ear I completely, so you have to switch sides and stuff like that, and really remind people all the time about, look, you can still talk to me, but please move to the other side, and things like that. And it's yeah, we so quickly forget about what kind of help that people need, or what way we need to support people, or work with people. So I think it's important to share that. So thanks for sharing that. Let's move to that next question. So if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would have become of you? Could you say some more? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. When I was really small, I wanted to be a dentist. Then I realized that then I would have to cut up people in practice, and I didn't want to do that. So I don't know why I wanted to become a dentist. Then I changed my mind and want to become an architect, the real kind of architects, those who design houses. And then my maths teacher in high school said, no, you don't want to become an architect. You want to study engineering physics, because otherwise you will miss the math. So I studied engineering physics.
And wait. And when that teacher told you this, did that surprise you, or how was the reaction when you got that remark?
Yeah, I didn't really see myself as very good at maths. I mean, I liked it, but it was sometimes really, really hard. I literally had tear stains in my maths book at high school from studying very late and becoming very exhausted. But then I managed to get a degree in engineering physics, a master's degree. So I was probably okay at maths.
Yeah. So can I have the tendency then to say that you kind of imposter syndrome, where you put the bar very high for yourself, or is that exaggerated?
I think I can. You're going to talk about things that are hard, right?
Yeah, we'll talk later then about that.
Yeah, we can take that. But yeah, so the last stop before I became a software developer was assistive technologies, like creating tools for people who are disabled in some way, or enabling tools.
And you had already your problem with your eyes at that moment, or was that before?
Yeah, it was new, and it came from me studying at a department of my university who works with assistive technology, and they are really, really cool. They used user-centered design before it was a thing, and I did my thesis there on open source software for tools helping people with visual impairment and dyslexia, and looking at why we spend government money on things that are not open source.
Wow.
And I also got to teach some at some of their accessibility courses, explaining how it is to live with a visual impairment, for example.
Wow. So,
So I
and you
think,
were what age? Because it sounds like you're doing that from a very young age, working and explaining to people about who you are and how your life is. Is that correct?
yeah, I think I was 23, so not that young.
Well, that's still it's really good that to at that age already kind of explaining to the people around you, like, look, this is how life is for if you have less privileged in one way or another, and you can learn from it, you can teach from experience. I think that's
I created one of those glossy magazines tests. Do you fit to be a? And did one for do you fit to be a student with visual impairment? and had all these like yes and no questions. Do you like to have a close relationships with your librarian? Do you always remember to bring everything you need? Are you always on time for class? Do you always know at least 3 months before which books you will need for your studies? Are those books always published? Things like that. And then I went through it and explained why it was applicable.
And interestingly enough, you still know these questions so many years later, or you just invented a few now.
There were a lot of questions. I picked a couple of them that I remember.
You remember? That's interesting. And so I really like your answer to this question, because you just don't talk about one thing. You talk about multiple things that you did over your years, from going from a dentist to all architect, or all these different kind of things. So I like that, because it also shows to young people that it's never clear, or you might think it's clear what you want to do, but it will move in all kind of directions related to sometimes. And this interesting thing for me, interesting also, it's one remark, or you remember it as one remark from your teacher. Maybe it's multiple remarks, maybe it's multiple things, but it's somehow an influential person moving you into some kind of thing, even if you don't completely understand it at the time. Because what I'm hearing is like, I didn't really like maths, or it was there, but still it was not like this is my top love thing. But that teacher kind of understood you at the level that you didn't realize. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of agile. I had a goal. I took one step. I reevaluated. And I took the next step in another direction. But the first step was still right to get me
to the next
where
step.
I wanted to go. I just didn't know it. I mean, I picked natural sciences for my high school because I wanted to become a dentist or an architect. I don't remember. Architect, but it was probably architect already then. And then I switched to engineering. And then
and
during engineering, I took my first software development course. I was
and
like,
then wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Really like mind-blowing.
I hadn't written one line of code before I went to university, and was like, is this software development? Can I do this? Can I make my computer do things by telling it to? And when I settled into studying engineering physics, I had Marie Curie as my role model. I wanted to invent things. And then I came there and I realized, with visual impairment, physics get kind of hard because a lot of the equipment is from the 50s. And not having assistive tech during school, I had to learn all of these things. I had to learn to listen to books. I had to learn how to ask for what I needed. All of that was hard. Configuring my computer with a bigger font was easy. So the software courses went really well. And what I admired in Marie Curie was her inventiveness, her solving new problems in her kitchen. And you can't do that with physics anymore. You need big things. Yeah. And it takes a long time. With software, you can write really cool things at your kitchen table.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because it actually, software moved in the opposite side, in the sense that my father worked on the very first computers in Belgium, and they were like, they didn't fit your kitchen. They were so big. And today, like you say, your phone is actually much more powerful than the computers he was working with. So it moved from a large size to a small size. And what you're saying is what Marie Curie was working on, that was very small in her kitchen, and that kind of exploded, and you need a large laboratory and you need all the kind of things. And so I've never thought about it, because indeed these two sciences, if we call them sciences, they moved in a different direction for other kind of reasons, making it actually computer, like you say, much more accessible for everyone, not just computers, but the fact indeed that you can indeed, I remember back in the 90s, even Windows, you could very easily reconfigure your sizes from the fonts for everything. Title bars bigger, documents bigger, but this bigger, that smaller. You could do it all. It was kind of strange sometimes, because you could mess everything up really strange. But for people like you, it must be really good, because you can really decide this is what needs to be bigger. The font, the menu, probably after a while, you know which thing is where, so you can just click like what it is. But if you want to type, you really want to see the words and did I make mistakes and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's
And I've had a computer in my home since I was 3, because the genetics came from my father. So he got his first computer as an assistive tool in 85.
wow.
And I started using it. So there's records of me typing and having it printed. When I was 7, I wrote stories on the computer and got it matrix printed.
Wow, that's so you didn't see yourself as a programmer at age 7, but you were used to, in a way, also controlling a computer, because the stories were, it's not really controlling a computer, but the fact that you could write them and you can print them is also a little bit telling your computer, hey, this is my idea, bring it to life one way or another. So in a sense, you were already using a computer to do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah, the technical interest was there. And my father is an early adopter in everything technical. So I come from that kind of environment.
And what I want to zoom also a little bit in you said I wrote stories, but in the whole everything you talked about, you never said anything like I wanted to become a writer. Was that ever something that was on your mind?
Yes. And some of my teachers, when I was 15, thought that I would become an author. They also thought that I might become a politician. I have strongly held views. They're not in stone, but I feel strongly about them as long as I believe in them. But yeah, so I love language, but that is also connected to software development. There is research showing that mathematical talent is not as important for being good at software development as being good at natural languages.
I didn't know about that. Definitely, I want to add it to the show notes and some of the research about that, because it's I'm not surprised, but I didn't know that there was research on that. So that's thanks for sharing that part as well. It's
I hope I can find the source. I don't know if I've saved it somewhere, but I probably have it on my papers, in my papers folder on my computer.
We'll deal with that after we'll deal with that after the conversation. But thanks for bringing that up already. Even if we don't find it, people might still be able to find it and then add it in the comments as well. So I want to move to that next question, because we've talked about so many different things you were could have been, and we already talked a little bit about challenges. So what do you consider at this moment your biggest challenge, at least the one that you want to be out on the open on the internet?
Yeah, I think we talked about things being hard that are usually not hard for people. And I think that's a bit of a theme, that I'm quite good at things that are usually hard. Like I did get the master's in it's like, yeah, but remembering things is hard. So I have alarms for everything. People remember that their kids need food. I have a timer for that. So
you need to rush off not to give your children food? No, it's taken care of already.
It was an example. This was something else. Very much not important. I thought I had muted everything that could make noises, but no, that is also hard.
You forgot about something. That's even if it's not muting it is a nice example about that.
So
I find it really nice that we're talking about challenges, and just at that moment the timer goes off. I can understand that you might feel a little bit annoyed, but at the same time, it's a perfect example on what is for some people hard, and that or for some people easy, and for you hard, and you. But at the same time, I hear also that you found solutions or you have tools that are helping you for these challenges. That's what I hear.
And because a part of the question is, why is the benefit? I have to be very deliberate with some things. And I mentioned my ADHD. I think people sometimes are called scatterbrained. Like it's a lot of stuff going on. And I sometimes think of my brain as a software engineering team in its own. So I use the same tools for managing myself as neurotypical people only need when they have to collaborate in a group. So I think that a lot of the agile tools made more sense to me quickly than for neurotypical people, because I use the boards and post-its for me. The stand-ups,
to remind ups and everything. So that's I've actually seen a few people with ADHD who are similar. We never discussed it, but I also worked on a course on personal agility, and indeed tools like Trello and other kind of things. And it doesn't matter what kind of board it is, but some kind of board. And some people prefer post-its, other people prefer technical boards. It doesn't really matter, but it's one way or another finding tools that help you dealing with everything you need to deal with. I never saw it as you like. I really like the way you describe it, but I never saw it as that. Yeah, my brain is as a software team on its own. It's an interesting way of a metaphor that really works well with me. I like that.
Yeah, and if I ever write a thesis, it will be on crossover between software tools and tools for people with disabilities. So can we move it from one area to another to get more inclusive, but also find better tools?
And I think it would, I would, of course, it's not up to me to say what you need to do, but it would be wonderful because I think both communities would be helped by it. And I mean, like you say, software development, sometimes we only like the examples we talked about earlier with the PowerPoint and the code. The fact that you're forced to use it in a certain way helps everyone, and what you need for your brain will actually probably make a lot of these tools better when we would apply that, or when we would have some of these features for everyone. So that is a very
universal design is the word. Universal design.
Yes. And like you said, you learned about that also at university when you talked about user design and everything that was early adapters that they were, which of course doesn't surprise me, because that's for people with some kind of disabilities, we need a lot more adaptation than people usually think. And I've worked on some software and with some departments that really embrace that, and I've always learned that I've seen it every time. People think we're just doing it for these small set of people. No, it's always better for everyone. It turns out that everybody likes the software better once we start learning these lessons, and once we start using some of these things that originally look like, oh, we're helping out a niche number of people, but it's almost never the case. In, I would say, 90 to 95%, and maybe more, the software is adapted for everyone, I would say, or is better for everyone. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, and the methodology used to figure out how to help someone with a very specific problem is also very helpful to figure out how a user experience our product. and the same
Mm.
steps can be used. So I was surprised when I started working. Why are we not doing user studies? Why are there no users here? How do I know what they would like? Because I was used to having a very specific user, and then adding another user, and then I added a third user, and then suddenly it was a general product. That was the methodology I was taught. But it took a very long time before people started talking about design sprints, and then I recognized it. It was like, okay, so the world is catching up.
But yeah, I remember when I discovered Agile, I also discovered personas. So, and for me, it felt a very logical way to combine it. And I think it took me 10 years to realize, but no, these are actually two communities that most people think are not working together. I'm like, no, we can learn from both sides. And that's, and what I'm hearing is you had a very similar experience, and you probably, because you learned it in university, you learned it much better as what I discovered just by reading a few books. But
I got
yeah,
to practice it.
you got to practice it with people who were studied it, and you actually got to work with real users and
And
real
real
life
problems,
examples.
creating real solutions. It was awesome.
I can imagine. I'm not very quickly jealous, but this is the kind of thing where I think, damn it, I wish I was there to learn of that. So that's. But thanks for sharing, because it shows indeed, and I liked what you said. The world is catching up. We need to do that much more. I see accessibility and all kind of ways to deal and help people is helping a lot of people. So that's.
And not guessing. I mean, the user is the expert in what they. I mean, okay, Apple is producing stuff we could never imagine. That is perhaps true. But in some sense, for most products, we need to try. Does it work? Will they find the button? Does this menu make sense? In what
Back
order do they type things?
I remember a story, and I'm never sure if it was a real story or not, but I remember at the Microsoft conference about 20 years ago when I heard somebody talk about that. I think it was the Office team. It doesn't really matter what, and they were working with real users using the software for the very first time, and then the developers were behind a glass, so a smoked mirror. So, and they were looking at, and that person couldn't use the software, and the developers, their first reaction was, stupid user, bring us another one. And so you have the second user trying it out, and only after 5 users or so they start to realize maybe it's not the user, maybe it's our software.
Yeah.
And I recognize that so much. We developers, or at least I've seen so many teams that they think we know how users work. No, we don't. We really need to work with real end users to understand what they want.
And it doesn't make you smart that the user feels stupid.
Thank you for doing that. This is interesting. We're an industry that somehow we convinced the user that when he doesn't understand our software, that he's dumb, where actually the opposite is true. The developers are dumb and we didn't adapt it to the user, but we have somehow created that environment when the end user can't use our software, that he or she feels stupid.
Yes.
It's insane. It's insane. And it's the opposite. We're
And we
not
do it to
smarter.
ourselves as well.
Say more.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you don't know how to use this function. You don't understand this language. Is it hard for you to use the editor? Don't you understand that you have to do this before this?
Yeah, these are really good questions that indeed, well, they are bad questions, but good examples of how we do that to ourselves and to our industry. That's I really like that. It's confronting to think about it, but that's exactly what we need to do more, I think. And I kind of start to understand already a little bit what your teachers were talking about when they said you wanted to go into politics and you want to, and you radiate all these kind of thing, and you learn that much and you bring it on, and that's I love these kind of conversations. So thank you for doing that. So and it kind of shows, and that brings automatically that next question, that you're a driven person, you're a very passionate person, because you very quickly bring all and that passion. Do you know where that drive or that passion is coming from?
Not really, not concisely. I think the best way to describe is I was brought up Christian. Both of my parents are pastors, I think is the correct term, in the Swedish Lutheran Church. And there's this story about two people or three people, I don't remember. Some people got some money, talents from their master, and were supposed to spend it. And one got 10 and one got 1 and one buried theirs. And the point is that you should use what you got. And that's where we got the word talent from, that story. So if you're
from the
talented,
Old Testament, it's a story in the Old Testament, I think. No, you
I would think
disagree?
it was a Jesus story, but I don't remember.
It's somewhere in the Bible. It
It's
doesn't
in the
matter.
Bible. Yeah, so I get joy from doing things that I'm kind of good, that I'm good enough at. I like solving problems. I like creating things. I like connecting with people. It's like I have all of this thing in me, and it's when I get to share it or do things with others with it, or that's when I feel good. I also don't like suboptimal things or counterproductive things. So when I see something that is not working as it should, I'm one of those annoying people who send very expensive bug reports for programs that I use, like screen recording level. If I click this and click this won't work. Look.
Which is fantastic.
There's a problem there.
I like also to tell people about open source or other things. I like to tell people, look, this is a little bit better, but I don't think I've done much screen recordings. So your investment in these bug reports is even higher than most people, I would say. That's what you mean with expensive, with that it's expensive in your time. Did I understand that correctly?
Expensive. I think I meant like
expensive. Yeah, so okay,
big,
large ones and
large.
Big ones.
So, and it's not to point fingers. It's more like I found a problem that can be solved. I'm thinking a lot about octopi, those water creatures. That if you keep them in captivity, they start to, make trouble, like escaping, squirting water at light bulbs so that the electricity breaks down, throwing things, eating fish in other tanks because they're bored. So if you want to keep octopi in captivity, you have to give them puzzle boxes so that they have something to do.
I didn't know that. I knew that they really wanted to escape, but I didn't know it's because they were bored. So if you really give them puzzle boxes, then you can keep them longer. Basically, that's a little bit what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Or they're not that annoying.
I think software developers are a lot like octopuses, and I'm also a lot like an octopus. We need problems to solve. And I read a book. I don't remember which one, but they talked about the way to happiness in life is to find a good problem to dedicate your life to. It should be something that you can work on, but it won't be solved, because if you solve the problem, you will have to find a new problem. So, because we are created to have problems, and if we don't find a good problem, we will find problems in everything.
I like that philosophy, because it's indeed, it's also the fact that you added to it, it shouldn't be solvable, because indeed then we were annoyed and I like that philosophy.
And I think my favorite problem is that the IT industry is broken. Because it is.
And but now I get annoyed that we can't solve it, and we should solve it. So
yeah,
if
but
we can,
it's good that you can't solve it, because then we would need a new problem. So it's big enough to last my lifetime. But
no,
it's
don't
still
say that.
something.
We should fix it before you die, then the rest of the world is better off. But I agree. Yeah, it will probably.
We can always aim higher.
Right.
Yeah, it's. But it's still things that you can actually work
that's
with.
what drives you. That's what drives you, is again, time and again, helping making the software industry better. That's what I'm hearing. One step at a time, one bug report at a time, one annoying email or whatever. But
one TDD session with someone, one ensemble session, one blog post at the time.
And like you say, and it's good to keep stressing, it's not to finger point. It's really to help people and to help the industry itself becoming better. And that's it's good to point that out. I just earlier today I talked with a tester, and I also said, like, look, we know that you want the same thing. You want to create better software, and some developers get annoyed and they see, like, yeah, but that tester is buggy. Well, no, the tester is actually want that same thing that you want, better software. And many developers are, when they do something and it works, they're happy, like, I've done my work. A tester, when he or she can't find a bug, is annoyed because he hasn't done, or she or they haven't done their work in that sense. So that is it's the same kind of thing. Thanks for sharing that. And that I can definitely say where a lot of drive is. I want to, and you don't need to go in if you don't want to go into detail, but you talked a little bit about your parents as being pastors. Was there a part of that in them as well? As typically, I also see that these religion people, they also want to create a better world. Is there some part in that, or is that do I see too much there?
I think there's a lot of helping people. Especially my dad is one of those. One of the things that I'm most proud of him is how he deals with people in grief. He's good at grieving, at taking care of people who lost someone really important to them, or at least that's the sense I get, and that makes me very proud of him. My mom is, she was the first woman who got a doctor's degree in her subject in her city.
Wow.
And
talking about changing the world and setting a dent.
And it's exegetics. So she read the Gospel of Luke in Greek and then compared it to biographies that was written before the Gospel of Luke. And from that information, trying to figure out if the first people hearing the Gospel of Luke, if they saw it as a biography, how would they then interpret it?
Wow. That's
super geeky.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. It has nothing to do with IT, and at the same time, it's super geeky, indeed. So you interesting enough, you said before, I got some of the genes from my father in a way, and the computer thing, but the geekiness you got as much from your mother, I would say.
Yeah, I grew up with like Latin, how you like in different tempuses of Latin words on. When I went to the toilet, I had those on the wall. Like she put things over everywhere when she needed. She learned Latin while I was a kid, and also took me to a Latin evening course when I was like 10. I mostly read Obelix and Asterix under the table. I could have been younger. I don't remember. Anyway, so this love for knowledge and sharing knowledge is a really crucial part of my upbringing.
I can imagine. And talking about setting the bar really high, I mean, if you see parents that are so dedicated to learn, because that's also, I think, is an important part when you're young and you still see your parents learning something new. I mean, a lot of us, we grew up and our parents learned something when they were younger. And by the time that we're studying, we don't see them as learning persons. But for you, that definitely is something different. If your mother puts everything around the house, even on the toilet, you kind of, at the same time, you're kind of immersed in the learning environment that she's creating for herself, I would say.
Yeah, I was old enough to help proofreading her dissertation. So
Wow.
I was grown up
Okay.
when she was finished. So I saw the entire process. We even shared a one-room apartment for a while when I was at university and she was writing her thesis and I hadn't got my own apartment yet. That was intense, but nice.
Wow, but that it's yeah, that's I didn't even think about that. That I was thinking about, okay, you learn about the learning part, but she's actually doing a thesis and everything at more or less the same time that you were at university. So that, yeah, okay, that puts the bar really high, because usually a lot of us, we can say, oh, dad, mom, you studied university, but that was 20 years ago. You have no idea how it works. And for your mother, it was literal, I'm doing it right now. So
Yeah,
did
I
that
think
put
she
pressure
was
on
done in
you as a child?
2004.
Did that put
Pressure.
pressure on you? And in the sense that that, oh, she's such a woman that achieves such big things. Do I need to achieve the same thing, or you didn't feel that?
I don't know. It's also, I have a sister that is almost 2 years younger. And I think she competed a lot with me. I don't know how much I competed back, but she often won, being the brightest one. She graduated from high school before me because I went to Germany a year to work when I was 18. So she surpassed me and we went to different schools. So she had her graduations from high school like 2 days before me and was so happy about it.
I would. I can understand that she surpassed you, and at the same time, I think, well, but you moved a year to another country, which brings a lot of other knowledge that she didn't have. So,
Yeah.
and life is not a competition in its own, I would say. But yeah.
So I think the environment I grew up in was extreme in one way when it comes to the love for knowledge and the level of knowledge and the conversations we had. But it was also so full of joy. And I think that creates some of the clashes that I see with other people, is then if they don't see the joy I feel in solving problems, like when I see really bad code, I get so happy. It's like this Marie Kondo image when
Yeah.
she sits with all the cables. Yeah, that's me in a really messy code
And
base. But if you don't then see this, oh, I am going to get to solve a really interesting problem together with other people, I love this, as joy, me smiling and laughing can be interpreted as something threatening or belittling or accusing. So I have to be careful there and
so
be
when
clear
you
with my
laugh,
intent.
when you laugh, what I'm hearing is that people feel that you're laughing with them instead of laughing for joy. Is that the correct?
Yeah, or laughing at them in the
At
worst
them is
case.
even worse. Yeah,
So,
that's
and I
even
hope
worse.
that I manage to not do that, but I still have to be aware
Careful.
of, and also this in the autism world, there's a concept of info dumping, where you talk a lot about your favorite subject. And I have the luck to have a lot of autistic people in my closeness, close to me, friends, family members. And this info dumping, being really excited about a topic, needing to share it with others, can be misunderstood in some groups of people. So I am glad that I have people who understand it. That sometimes if you learn something new and it's really, really awesome, you want to share it with people.
That's I really like that, because when to bring everything together, you thought about, okay, I grew up in a learning environment where learning was really appreciated. I learned to solve puzzles and I enjoyed it, so that is an important part. But there was also a big part about, okay, I want to radiate what I'm learning and teaching people and improving the world. And so that last comment is really bringing everything back. It's not just about learning, but it's also about that desire to teach other people, hey, I've learned something new and this is what you can do in that, and this is how we can improve the world, and a lot of that I'm hearing. Yeah.
Soon I will figure out why my screen saver is turning on. Perhaps next time. But yeah, correctly, I listen to you. It's sharing is a part of the joy of knowing.
I like that. Yeah, it's I find it fascinating that whole, yeah, the way, not just the way you are, but also the way you understand yourself, where a lot of that is coming from and how you explain it about yourself. So thanks, because it gives a lot of insights in who you are, and like you said, understanding yourself and helping the people around you to learn who you are, and probably for other people also understanding when they would work with you or something similar, someone similar, that brings in a lot of things. So thanks for sharing that, because I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot, so I enjoy that part. Well, so thank you very much. I want to move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement so far? And the question below is really, this is, so like I say a lot of times in this, is that this is the moment that people can brag. Is that something that is easy for you as a person to brag?
It connects with this joy of sharing things. It's so it's hard to navigate bragging for me, because often what people see as bragging for me is wanting people to feel joy over the same things that I feel joy about. Like, I live in an awesome house. It's wonderful. And I want to share that with people. But I have to be careful, because it's seen as bragging. When I write a blog post that went very well, I get really happy. And I also want to know what people think about what I wrote. But I have to be careful, because it could be seen as bragging and then something. I'm super proud of my kids.
It's not always bad as to be bragging, but yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, in this culture, it's...
yeah, I understand.
So it comes natural to me, but not for the reasons most people think that you brag. So I have to dampen that part of me.
And I interrupted you when you started talking about your kids. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that part?
Just that I'm proud of them. But you have to be careful there as well, right? Find other parents that also can brag back. And yeah, so
is it easier? Is it easier for you, for example, to brag about your children than about your own work, for example? Is that something that...
Yeah, even more easy to brag about other people, like, because that isn't seen as bad, but it still is this outlet for me to share joy with others.
Yeah, and I think we also live in a world, like you said, it's not seen as bad, especially for women. In IT, I see that a lot. That when men do that, it's a little bit different. But when we brag about women, it's much easier and much more accepted than if you would brag about yourself. And I don't know how it is for other diversities, how it is for neurotypicals or less other people. But is there something there as well, or how should...
I don't know. I think there's a problem there that you can become an inspirational poster if you succeed despite of everything. But yeah. So anyways, I'm quite proud of my blog. I think I write neat, small, often only like 300-400 words posts. I have about 50 of them. People I admire sometimes say nice things about them. That makes me happy. It's like the best collection of my thoughts about software development that there are right now. And it's chocolate-driven development. That's my webpage.
It's
on a bigger scale, I'm kind of proud of my parenting and what me and my kids and my co-parent have achieved. But yeah. And that's very related to agile. But yes.
Could you say some more about the how would I say it, about the relation to agile? Could you say some more about that to make sure that I understand?
Yeah, I had this. I've been thinking a lot about our conversations. You gave me the questions. Questions are interesting, so I've been thinking a lot. And I realized yesterday that the new kind of parenting, gentle parenting, that I'm trying to do is actually agile. And that there's another parallel, because the software industry is shifting. It's slow, but it's moving from one way of doing software to another way of doing software. There's also, I believe, a shift in parenting from like carrot, stick, obedience. Kids are not really human. They're their own kind of thing, to communication-based, trust-based, gentle parenting, where you actually let the kids have a place in the family and you adapt things to their needs. And since I have kids, my oldest kid is autistic, and we don't really know about the other one, but I've had to adjust how I treat them. I couldn't just do what other parents do and expect that it would work. And in the Agile Manifesto words, it would be having a working life over following other people's expectations, instead of working software over comprehensive documentation. And there's this collaboration with the customer. It's collaboration with the kid, instead of having rules and regulations or contracts. And it's
wait, I want to go a little bit onto the contract, because especially with the autistic child, in many cases I would think they would need some kind of how would I say it, they need structure and stability. And I could see in one way that people could see that as a kind of contract, but you see it as completely different. Could you say some more about that?
Yeah, I think that I give my kids structure, but it's for their sake. So it's not that I say you are not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. I create a framework, more like having sprint reviews regularly, is a different thing than saying we are going to deliver everything at this date.
Right.
One is collaboration, the other one is having a contract.
Okay, thanks for explaining that, because indeed that's the structure that you create for your child, which at that point, and I assume, well, I say you, but I assume the you is there, the structure of the family. So not just you, but your co-partner, your partner, co-parent. So that brings that kind of structure, and in collaboration with the child, that can then renegotiate, or I don't know, how should I call it, like, okay, maybe that structure doesn't fit me anymore, and is that something that's happening there?
Yeah, a good example is the screen time. Who is controlling it? How much is Apple software? We use Apple, but like how much is software with pin codes and hard time limits? If we use that, who is owning the code? And as the children grows, depending how easy it is for them to actually put away the phone and go to sleep, they can have more and more. Are you still hearing me? I don't see your picture.
I'm still here. My camera just shut off, but we're trying to fix it while we're talking. So I didn't say anything.
I just wanted to know if I talked
Yeah.
out in the void or not.
You're not talking.
Yeah.
I was so interested. So please keep going. We're fixing it right now.
So it's about seeing how things work, and then I'm lucky. Both of my kids are quite bright, so I can reason with them. Sometimes I have to like enforce strict rules, and there are fights. But I try to then always have like the meta conversation of it. One of my absurdist examples is...
Wait, when you say meta conversation, is that then at the moment, or is that then a day later, or how should I see it?
It depends on who's the angry one and who has to do the meta work. Like, I can't expect my kids to do meta cognition while they're upset.
But you do expect it from yourself. That's what I'm hearing.
If I manage to keep calm, yes, I expect it from myself. So one of the absurdest situation that was still useful was when we had a fight, me and my oldest kid, and she expressed that she needed me to see that she was angry, and that will help her. So I sat in her bed, watching her being angry until she was ready to move on. And that sounds totally absurd, but it worked, and we wouldn't go there if we didn't have the collaboration part.
If you didn't have the meta conversation in an earlier fight or in an earlier moment.
I could ask her, what do you need from me now? We are having a fight, but to solve that, screaming at her wouldn't work. I knew that, and I was able to keep my calm. So I could be the parent, and then I could ask her. And since we had established a collaboration, she could answer me honestly.
Even while she was angry.
Even while she was angry, I gave her space, and it was her way to show me that she was angry. She had been throwing furniture in earlier conflicts. This time she knew that I would sit and watch her being angry instead of her destroying chairs. Yeah.
But you said before, I can't expect her to be the mature one, but that's already very mature if you can actually start understanding that and talk about, okay, I'm angry and I need you to first protect her own space, which partially is your responsibility, but at the same time talk about that and talk what she needs. That's and can I ask what age is she at the moment that you're doing this?
I think she was 13.
Wow, that is mature
12,
for that
13.
age.
She's 14 now. So
that is
and what's
mature for
appropriate.
that age. I think not many. I don't think I was able to do that kind of conversations at meta level when I was 12 or 13. So
Yeah. So
that's
yeah,
impressive.
my kids are awesome. But we also play this life on a higher difficulty level.
Mm. But what I'm hearing, when you say it's difficult, but at the same time, I'm hearing you learned probably early on or to work in an agile way, to treat her with respect and to treat her kind of like an adult, not just, okay, these are the rules and you're a child and blah, blah, you need to listen. This probably, it's much more complex than of course now, but you treat her with kind of dignity that
Like a
I would
human,
exactly, as a human,
not an
that's
adult,
kind of,
but a
okay,
human.
as human. But that also forces, or not forces is the wrong word, but that kind of tells that child, like, you're a human, I see you as a human, and that kind of makes people feel much more like, oh, I can behave as a human. I'm no longer, I'm not treated as a small little child. So I also have the feeling that when we do that, we keep our children smaller when we treat them too much as children. And like what you said is, I treat her as a human and she behaves more as a human, and that's probably why I use the word adult. And I can understand why that should put pressure also, so that might not be interesting or not good, but it's really, she's acting much more on a human based also for these kind of meta conversations. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot from. I've been reading parenting books, and often parenting books are the best human books. Like, how does human work? Because grown-ups are not allowed to have flaws or be emotional or have needs or all those other human things, but kids are allowed to have them. So by reading parenting books, I also learn how to deal with colleagues and bosses and customers. And
I like that. I like that. I've never seen it in that way, but I definitely agree. It's yeah, it is. It helps for working with other humans. Let's put it like that. At treating people, and indeed, well, it of course it would depend on how, what kind of parenting books that are. If they treat them really like small children, that wouldn't work with other humans. But it typically, I wouldn't see it working with children as well. We claim
no,
it working, but I disagree there. So I
I'm
think
talking
we
about the
agree.
new books after
All
the
right.
agile parenting book, the gentle parenting, the collaborative, the
And I want to move a
listening.
little bit to
Mhm.
what you said in almost in the beginning of this part, is that you said parenting moving in that kind of direction. Could you say, you said also something about agile moving or IT moving in that, in another kind of direction. Could you say some more about that? Because we skipped
Yeah,
that
it's
part, I
like
think.
the agile thing, the going from pre-agile to agile
Right.
manifesto. And it's also this trying to establish a new way of thinking about collaboration and value creation and everything that both software development and actually being a family is. We want to, we don't produce software in a family, but we produce decent days or something like that. Happy grown-ups
Decent, exactly, decent humans and happy grown-ups. That
and
which is
days that work, yeah, a working life somehow. And I think that XP is very team focused. It's to protect geeks. It's to enable software developers to have a better working life. It's a lot of team focused things that are like the heart of agile. People try to scale it. It doesn't really work well. And I see the same things, that it's often the parents who take this gentle parenting into their home, especially kids with autism or ADHD or both, where it's even clearer that sometimes a limit just makes things break. If you have a kid who's super sensitive to taste and consistencies and like texture in food, You can't say the kid will eat when they're hungry, because they won't. You have to be
Bring the
flexible.
structure and
You have to look at the needs of the kid, and not like live up to expectations. Kids should eat different things. No. My kid has comfort foods. When the rest of the life works well, we can try new things, but now this is what's going on. And then, so finding a way that work, often it's parents who do it. It's parent for kids with some kind of needs that are not the same as most kids. And then to try to spread that to schools. And I read a lot about things like this on Twitter. There's an entire community, struggles with grandparents, struggles with siblings, struggles with school, with like sports and everything. So trying to spread it is hard. And I think we have the same problems in the agile community. Like, we get one team agile, but okay, agile accounting is much newer than agile software development, but you need the accounting to be agile for everything to work. You have to have agile marketing, you have to have agile everything. So the change started where it was at most needed, where people were perhaps at most vulnerable. Because if we look at the DevOps reports, and the things that promote software success also limits burnout and like deployment pain and all of those things that makes it sometimes a bit painful to develop software. So the people closest to the mess had the most need of agile. The families are the ones most in need of gentle parenting. But then to make the rest of the world understand, how do we do that?
I really like it what you say on that spreading and yeah, what's the future of agile in multiple kind of ways, which you bring up, which I really like. And I think many people are struggling or thinking, and we're as a whole, indeed, how do we spread it? To what level? I want to zoom in a little bit on something you said that triggered me a little bit. You talked about when a child is not in the perfect moment. You talked about, okay, then it's hard for teaching something to learn about a new food and other things. And it triggered a thought in me that, for example, the last 2-3 years when there was a whole COVID situation, people barely kept it together, and for some people we broke down and it was really bad, but there were a lot of people that made it work more or less. But then felt bad. Yeah, but I don't read that much, and I learn less, and was like, no, you're barely holding it together. This is not the moment to learn as much new software or to learn a new. It's okay. We're all in a bad world. We're trying to make it work, but don't feel bad about yourself that you're not learning a new tool or a new whatever new thing. I feel a lot of similarities. Do you agree there, or do you have an opinion on that?
Yes. And I would add the spoony perspective, because I think that people with disabilities are more aware of them being human in a limiting way.
You mean the spoon theory?
Yes, you know about
theory?
it.
Yes, I know it.
Yeah.
I will definitely link to it. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. It's I didn't see the link, but yes. Please, for the people who don't know it, explain it a little bit.
Spoon theory, people with disabilities or other things that make their resources like a hard limit in a way that people without disabilities might not have. Like, if I'm too tired to do things, I will fall asleep and it will be hard to wake me. I've scared my ex-wife by falling asleep and hardly being able to get awake again. It's like my brain shuts off when I'm too tired. I can't force myself to do things. People who are autistic, when they get overwhelmed, the freeze reaction that we all can get when we like fawn as scared animals, with autism, you can get it really you can get it earlier. It can be with pain-related things. So if you have problems with pain, if you do too much in a day, you can be in a state where you can't really do anything at all. So if it's taking a beer with your coworkers after work, it might be that you won't have spoons enough to take a shower when you get home. So if your hair is really needs to be washed, you have to plan for a hair wash and then perhaps not do the beer thing.
You explain it and you talk about spoons, but you didn't use the start of the spoon theory. So for me, it's clear what you're meaning, but people who have never heard about the spoon theory, you need to explain a little bit from the start.
The spoons come from one person. I don't really know what the specifics were, but who is a spoonie, someone with this limited resources, trying to explain this to a friend. They were at a restaurant. The only thing available to explain it with was spoons. So she took a handful of spoons and said, okay, so say that for one day I have 5 spoons. Getting up, eating breakfast takes 1 spoon. Getting to work, commuting takes another spoon. I have 3 spoons left. If I work a full day, it uses up 2 spoons. The last spoon I have, I need to get home. If you ask me to go for a beer, if I can borrow a spoon from tomorrow, I might do that, but then I might not be able to work tomorrow. It's not
because
the
you
words
only have 4
exactly from the
spoons.
example.
Because then the next day you would not have 5 spoons, but you only have 4 spoons. That's why. And I really encourage people indeed to read the full story, because it's wonderful described on the link that I'll put in the show notes. And I think you explained it. No, but you explained it in like what, 2 minutes, which is really it could take half an hour to understand it and to do. So I would not be able to explain it in just such a short time. But I think it's really important for people to understand it, because what on top of it is that most of us, we have unlimited number of spoons, and people like the spoonie, like you or like your children, what you're explaining, or at least that one child has a limited set of spoons. And what I understand also is that maybe I'm not remember it correctly, but the way I remember it is that you don't know when you get up how much spoons you might have today, because you might have a bad sleep or whatever, and then you might get up with only 3 spoons instead of 5. Is that a correct way to say it?
Bad days, good days, and something can come suddenly that take all your spoons, and it's different for different people. For some people, it's more extreme, but I think that most people do have a limit. It's just not so obvious, and we can be quite wasteful with our resources, especially if we're not aware of them. So, for example, for my oldest kid, it's obvious I can't serve any new food when there's too much going on. But when things getting better, she gets curious again around food. So it's very clear. So there I can see how the general load on her makes a clear difference. And to tie that back to software engineering, when we don't care about our bodily limitations, we miss out on problem-solving energy. And there's also an inequality thing. So one of the things that gives most people more, let's not call it spoons, let's something else, like I want to call it marbles when talking about it. So giving us more marbles to spend is having adequate food. If we're in a country with diet culture and part of the team is not allowed to eat as much as they want without being frowned at, that will make it harder for them to be able to produce, to be productive, because they can't take that extra piece of chocolate when they feel that need that boost of energy.
Which most of us would be able to do
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And
Um,
I think it's really nice to add that. And meanwhile, while we talked, I tried to add the link, and I hope that it's fully so it's about so that's the article that Christine originally wrote. I will put it in the show notes as well for the people that want to learn more, because yeah, I think it's very useful as a coach. I've shared that story a lot because indeed it helps people to think really hard about different kind of diversities. And I think you brought it nicely from your child, but I think it's really true for many different kind of ways. And yeah, I think it's also related to a little bit what you said about yourself, about your body, and trying to understand that. So thanks for bringing that up. I didn't see it coming when I was asking the question, which I still don't understand why I didn't see it, because I do know the theory. So I'm really happy that we can spend some time talking about that thing. I want to move to the next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
retrospectives. You need to have good retrospectives. If your
And
team,
what's a good retrospective? Could you define what you find a good retrospective?
yeah, I have a proper text on my blog post that I probably don't remember, but I will wing it. So if you don't like my answer, go and read on my blog, um, and see if you still don't like it. But I think the core is that you need a retrospective that brings out the best in the team. So the point with having a retrospective is to get the team to solve the problem of what to try next, to get a bit better at what they're doing. So instead of me pushing suggestions of change to them, I help them collaboratively build on each other's ideas to figure out what the next experiment should be. So just having people giving suggestions and then select a few of them and trying that is not really utilizing that you have so many people in the same room. And if you have exercises that feels boring or that don't fit everyone in the room, so that it's just the extroverts or just the introverts that gets to share their thoughts. I mean, I'm one of those who think by talking. And so if you design a retrospective without thinking of that, it will be like one person talking and then the time is over. Or me being quiet and not really being able to think, or at least not as good as if I get to talk to someone about it. So having really good exercises, some people need to be quiet and think alone first before they can share things. So being really deliberate on how you design the retrospective. I also think of it as data flow. So I use the agile retrospectives, Making Great Teams, Good Teams Great by Diana Larsen and Ester Derby.
Which there is a new version
New
coming out.
edition! Yes, I hope they will have it as audio. Otherwise, I will actually read it with magnifying glass if I have to, because the first one is so good.
Knowing them, that they've spent a lot of energy in making audio versions of their other books, I would be really surprised if they didn't. But both of them have been here on the show, and I will push is maybe the wrong word, but I will definitely encourage them to create an audio version, because it's really important, that kind of book. Sorry, I take over, but that part I want to add, and my camera is off again. So, but we'll fix that. But what I wanted to say is that what is so good about that book is that on top of reading, it's actually good from time to time to re-listen to it and to relearn it, even if you've read it. This is a book, it's still I was looking for it, it's not on my desk, but it's very close because I reuse it multiple times. A month is maybe exaggerating.
Here.
Exactly, that's the book. Thank you for bringing it up.
It's like literally one of 3 books in my bookshelf. because I have
And
everything else in audio.
and while you do that, let me also share the link post that you talked about earlier about a good retrospective. So I'll put it in the show notes as well. I think that's the one on your chocolate-driven development blog post. I really like, and I don't know if you wanted to add something before I interrupted you, but I really want to stress what you said about designing it for both introverts and extroverts. I think it's so crucial to when we ask for ideas to what my tip, my trick, and it could be all the people might have different things, but my trick is to let people write down for 1 or 2 minutes, because introverts need some time to think, and usually 1 or 2 minutes they can come up with something, and most extroverts can shut up for 1 or 2 minutes, and that's a little bit the balance that I found. If I ask people to write down for 10 minutes, the extroverts will start talking, and then we lose the thing. And so that's just the kind of balance that I found. But have you other kind of tips around that? When you say good retrospectives, what is there a trick in how you facilitate that?
I want to add the liberating structure one to many is a good thing, because then you get people to talk to each other as well. You can like aggregate ideas. So liberating structures, I think it's called one to
One,
many.
two for all, I think.
One, two for all. Yeah.
It's the book is somewhere. If I go there, the book is there.
It's also like open source or Creative Commons on the website. There's a lot of exercises. There's also a lot of exercises in the Agile retrospectives book that you can pick from. And I used to think of it as data flow. So what the output I want is one experiment, only one, because otherwise it won't work. If people want to do other things that come up on their own behalf, that's fine. But the team should only say one thing. If they do retrospectives afterwards without me, they can pick as many as they want. But if they need me to help them start with retrospectives, then they can only pick one. And the input is the team.
I really like that answer. It's I see so many people trying to make retrospectives fun and all kind of things, and it's not that we cannot do it, but usually it means that they have picked up so many ideas and then nothing gets done, and then people find, why do we even do retrospective? Yeah, it's a kind of in Dutch we call it praatbarak. So we keep talking and nothing gets done. And with your tip, and that's just why I want to stress it, just picking one, the chances that it will get done is like, exponential. It annoys people the hell that they can only pick one, but they do it. And after 4 or 5 retrospectives, they realize, oh, okay, just picking one actually means we do this. We ignore everything else, because let's face it, we also should write software, and then it gets done. So that is why I interrupted, and I really wanted to stress that part. So sorry, I interrupted. What
so
else
then
do you want to
there's
add?
these 5 stages in the book that I usually go by, like setting the stage, gathering data, generate insight, decide what to do, and wrap it up. So, and each of these stages are one or more exercises where you move post-its and prioritize with dots and write timelines and stuff. And the input from one needs to match the output from the previous, and the output from that has to match the input from the previous. And also thinking about width and narrowing. So at the beginning, I want to gather a lot of stuff, and I want to narrow it down, and then I want to generate new stuff from that, and then I want to narrow it down until we have something that is actionable. So using different exercises, but also thinking about, okay, I have a gap here. This exercise brings me this, but I need this thing for this exercise to work. What could I do to turn this into this? And it's like software.
I really like that you stress the stages, because so many people, they just talk about, okay, let's gather some insights and let's take some actions, but no, let's make sure that we well, kind of a check-in, well, all the kind of stages. Let's make sure that we take time to gather data, which is something that is not done enough, I would say. That's usually the one stage that I see skipped most. And I'm maybe less religious on that, in the sense that it might be okay to sometimes skip some stages, but in general, most of the time we should do all five and learn from it. There might be moments that, for whatever reason, we just need to more to talk a little bit because it was a very stressy situation, a little bit like with the spoon theory that we talked about. Maybe we need something else today, but most retrospective we should have as an outcome one action, and we should do it. And then that's one improvement. The sprint is already a lot, huh?
Yeah. And if you don't do sprints, you can have an improvement cadence.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. It's not just limited to Scrum. It's you can just do it in whatever cadence you want, if you but taking the time to improve. There's some people that think, oh, we don't do sprints, so we don't need retrospective. Well, no. Then I don't think you're actually doing agile. You could do it in a different way. Yeah? I've gave the example yesterday, a few days ago. I know a team that does a mini retro thing at the end of their stand up every day. So then just take a small. They don't do the five stages, and there is a problem in the sense that if you look back every 6 months, they don't take the time to look back at the larger scale. So they still need to do some kind of retro every 3 months or something like that. But their cadence is every day we find an improvement to do over the last day, which is incredible.
And I would say that they do all the 5 steps, though, because if they do the stand-up, they've done the setting the stage and gathering the data, right?
Yeah, you're right. They don't. I should have said it differently. They don't do it formally, but
Yeah,
they still do it. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's
because
actually a very good point.
I think if it works without the 5 steps, the 5 steps become less valid somehow.
Mm.
So by pointing out that they're actually doing the work, they just don't see it. It's harder to skip out on the work the next time because you don't see that you already did it.
You point out something really important for me. I'm not sure you realize it, but when you say when it's working, the structure is less important. That's kind of what you said. The 5 steps are less important, and I think I see this with so many people. When everything's working fine, the structure we don't mind that much. But from the moment things break down, what I see is bringing back the structure helps again. In multiple kind of ways. I see the same thing with teams on retros, with even with relationships. We don't need to have a formal sit down, let's talk and improve our relationship. But once things are really going to hell, then maybe we need to be much more formal and say, okay, let's take some time in a regular cadence. Let's take some time to improve again. I see that with teams. I see that on multiple kind of levels. Is that what you were talking about, or is it something different?
And or that it's easy to disregard things that you don't realize that you do. So then you think that you can be without them. And then it breaks down because you don't really realize that you used to do this thing. But now then you try to do it explicitly and skip it, then it doesn't work. So they're having a stand-up gathering data. And then they do like the last steps of the retro really short. If they then want to have a big retro and things that when we do our small retros, we don't gather data because they forgot that that's what they're doing, then it will probably not work with the bigger retrospective because they don't have anything to work with. And then they might blame the format.
Yeah.
Like say,
I really
big
like that.
retrospectives won't work in our team.
What I've noticed with this team is that I'm no longer working with them, but I keep in touch with a few of the people there. Is that what they came to realize is, first of all, they needed these large retrospectives, But on top of that, they need facilitators for these large retrospectives. So they've learned we need someone who are helping with these kind of things.
Yeah,
I
that's
think there
also
is a
one of the
parade
things.
going on in your
Yes.
street.
I,
It's not bothering me, but yeah,
good.
I've
It
noticed that.
distracted me a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was listening to you as well. And yeah, I think having a facilitator, if you don't think that retrospectives is something for you, then have someone do it for you. I will do it for free. If it makes
Wow.
you start having retrospectives, I will facilitate a remote retrospective with your team for free.
Wow, that's an offer. That's really an offer that people should take on. Be careful, many people might. But I agree there. Maybe not on the free part because I think there might be risks to offering too much for free. In a
One
sense that people
retrospective
don't
for free.
always. Yeah, I heard that. But
The first
that
kick
people
is
don't.
free.
Your the drug dealer.
Yeah,
in a sense.
it's called naked consulting, I think, when you do it in as a consultant. This Leocioni, getting naked.
I know the theory. I know this thing.
Anyway,
It,
continue.
no, it's now I'm distracted in multiple kind of ways. But yeah, I like the way that you offer it. I think people will take you up on that because I think it's indeed your beyond the offer is something really important. What you said that if you don't like retrospectives, be sure that you do it properly before you decide if it's not working or if it's not working for your team. It's probably because you haven't understood how they really are. So that is, and that kind of also brings me a little bit to the next question because you said I could do this. How would I say? I could do this remotely. And now I don't hear the sound anymore, so I'm not sure if I still hear you, but I don't
I
hear.
muted myself
Okay.
because they're really loud.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so that's fine. So that brings me to that next question. What have you learned about remote working? And you said already you would offer remote things. So what you want to share there?
Yeah, I learned remote working from Emily. You talked to her about it. I learned to use Miro. But what I learned is this that we talked about earlier as well, that when there's a structure that you take for granted and then you lose it, you will have to reestablish that structure. And I'm still struggling with part of it, like the social part. I realized that there's a Discord that I hadn't remembered to go in and check for a while. And if that had been a physical thing, that would have been possible. So I lost like the structure in the room when being remote. And it's hard to realize what disappears before you see things depend on it suddenly not happening. And there's some research showing that the people who suffer most from remote working is the introverts, because they need the structure of connection with other people the most, because they won't be seeking it themselves.
I really
Extroverts,
like that. I really like that because I've seen so many people struggle and introverts struggle during COVID because they thought, oh, I can work from home perfectly fine. And then a little bit later, that it's and now again my camera, I seem to really have a big problem. I'll let you continue about the remote work. What the yeah, go ahead. Bring some more
yeah,
about the introverts and the structure.
yeah. So, but I think it's that, like, we lose a lot from not having the physical things around us. Perhaps I suffer more from it because of ADHD. It's a lot of out of sight, out of mind. There's something about object permanence that's not really working fully. But yeah, I think that's a tough part. The things that we get automatically when it comes to structure. So yeah.
It's wonderful, and it's wonderful that you link it to introversy, and because it's yeah, people don't always realize that, and I think it's really important to do that. Um, Extroverts have other kind of challenges, I would say, but I think it's really good that you state that for remote work. Uh, I've had many people, well, I had some people on the show talking about how they actually like to do remote trainings, for example, because it forces them to create more structure, it forces them to think more through. So there still is value. How is that for you? Do you prefer doing trainings more remote, more physical? How does that work for you?
Um, there are some things that is good to do in person because you get to know people better when you're in the same room. Uh, but when it's with people that you do know, I sometimes think that remote can be more accessible. Like you are in your place, you have your tools, you have your comfort. It's not that you're stopped from going anywhere because you have to be home at that time so you can't commute, or you don't have the money to go to a conference because some circumstances. um, I am really excited about the Apple Vision Pro because that will be the first time that I can have a properly sized screen when I'm not at home. But until that, until I manage to get one, I will always have the disadvantage of not having my own computer with its settings and the big screen and everything. And I think that's for a lot of people. Like this again with how do we work when we work our best? I mean, we should optimize for comfortability. I'm like all for the comfort zone because life is hard enough anyway. We can solve really hard problems in our comfort zone. It's not about that. So if you have a really good coffee maker at home and that's the best coffee you have, yeah, and good coffee is important, then working remote will give you really good coffee. And that might be the thing that makes you a better software developer. And that's okay. We're human.
And I really like that you bring that up. I didn't think about Apple Vision in that sense, and but yeah, I do understand. It's again about the spoon theory. It's again about having the environment, having everything you need. And indeed, for some people, it's a better screen. For others, is copy. For others, it's I want to have a look at the garden, or I want to have my books with me, or I want to. I don't know what it is. I don't want to have to commute because it takes 1 or 2 spoons for me. That might also be the case. Um, that's it's different for each and everyone. So thanks for bringing that up. That yeah, we wouldn't have this conversation if there wasn't for remote possibilities, and that also it brings in a lot of other things. You talked about, okay, conferences, can we go? And it's not always about money, it's not always about time. It's also about, okay, I want to maybe spend more time with my family, with my children. How does that work? And with a remote conference, I can just zoom in, call in, whatever, for a couple of hours, then go back again. Or if you don't have that many spoons, I can just go to one session fully remote, listen 1 hour to an amazing speaker, then go back to my bed because I need to rest. That brings all these kind of things.
Yeah, and spoon theory is for people with disabilities, but all humans have limited resources, at least limited for optimal performance.
Thank you. Yes. We don't always realize it. I might, I have it's already a while ago, but I was using an app on my phone for, I don't know, testing my brain. It's with a little bit mad games and a few other things. Um, and at some point, I used it on a day that I had hardly slept, and it was just using it on a daily basis, and my results were like awful. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling okay. I haven't slept well, but I drank some coffee, so I'm fine." Until I did that little program, and it was like, yeah, let's say a normal day, I would reach a score of 100. Now I had like a score of 20 and was like, what the hell? What's happening? And it only then occurred to me like, oh, I'm actually not as performant today as I thought I was because I only slept 1 hour. And that's exactly what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, could you ask me about the book now?
Yes, that's. I wanted to actually go to what's a book you have read, and I felt that it was going to that direction.
Yeah, it's on Sweller's cognitive load theory. So Sweller's the researcher, the author of the
And
book.
that's the book, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So the author of the book wrote it and had help from Sweller writing it. So sometimes the people with the good ideas are not the good authors. So this is like a combination of both. And cognitive load theory is what we're talking about. How do we use our brain so that we use it best? What makes it hard to do things? What makes things unnecessarily hard? And the focus in the book is a lot about teaching and schools and how to design school books and how to teach things. But software development is actually a lot about learning because everything we do is new. If we solve the same problem twice, we have failed because we should have automated it. So it should always be at least a bit new. So what we do is on the, like, yeah, right now, right here, learning new stuff all the time because we're like creating and inventing and problem solving. So I think that the same things that apply to learning and teaching can be used in software development. And there's a lot of things in the book. I plan to write something about it that is shorter than reading the book. I recommend reading the book though, but I hope that I will be able to like lift up the stuff that is like applicable for software development more directly and perhaps tweak it a bit to make it clearer. But I think that a lot of the things we do with test-driven development, for example, is that we split the problem. Like it's a lot about your working memory. We have a limited working memory. We have long-time storage, we have short-time storage, we have the workbench where we do our thinking, and then we fetch things from those storages, and the workbench has a size, and we can't fit everything on the bench. We have to pick what we put on the bench to be able to solve the problem. And the more we have to pick to solve the problem, the harder it is to solve the problem. So if we could split the problem by writing one test, then making it pass, writing another test, making it pass, then we've already limited what we need to have on our cognitive table or cognitive work table. Also, if I don't have to remember everything because I have an IDE that does things for me with autocomplete and where I should put my curly braces and stuff, then it's things that I don't have to have on my table. If it's something that is tricky and I can like solve some of it and then some solve it, it also makes it fit. Like it's a lot of those things.
I really like that you pointed the link, or you made the link between test-driven development and limiting what we need to think about it. It so clicks with me. I don't think I've ever thought about that, but it so feels right. Indeed, we're TDD for me is like, okay, I define a little problem. And what I used to do before I learned about TDD is that in the beginning, I was taught, okay, you write in a function, you write some kind of comments. In comments, I write, I need to do this first, then I need to do that, then I need to do that, then I need to do that. And then I filled it in with code. And depending on how people liked it in my team, I might delete the comments. But that's a little bit what I was taught in school. But and it's the same thing. What do I want to solve? and what are the steps before I even want to go into that, because I'm thinking at that broader level. And TDD is solving that for me in a better way, in the sense that, okay, I think about that problem, I write the problem statement in a sense. It tells me it's not working, because that's what we need to do in the TDD style. I need to test my test, and it's red, so it doesn't work. And then I need to solve it, and I can only solve that part. It's working now. I need to refactor it a little bit. I can again focus on one small part. How can I make it look a little bit better? Improve a small little thing. Don't think about the big world. Don't think about everything. About what's a small thing to improve. Maybe a second thing, but try to limit what I'm doing all the time. I never thought about it, how that is about, yeah, using my brain in an optimal way, because we're limited in capacity. It's so much clicks, and I don't know if Kent Beck and everybody else who thought about and created TDD were thinking in that way, but it so makes sense in that sense. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and one of the other things taught in the book is how to break a problem into pieces using chaining. So, for example, if you're going to learn how to write a lab report, you could either start with the introduction, or you could start with the conclusion and have everything else done for you. So you get a lab report that is done, and then you write the introduction for it, or you get a lab report that is almost done, and then you write a conclusion for it, if writing the entire report is too big for a 10-year-old, for example. And then you would get more and more incomplete lab reports for each laboratory session. And that way you would learn how to write a lab report. And I think that is what we're doing when we either start with like top level end user story test, and then we figure out, okay, what method calls does this need? What method call does this need, until you're at the bottom, and then you build yourself up. Or you see, okay, so what database calls do I need? I do that mock port stuff. Okay, so that data, what will I do with that? Okay, I write a unit for that with tests, then a unit test the next level, then until I have a feature.
Yeah, it so makes sense indeed to and the example you gave for writing the lab report for children or other things, that's indeed you want, as a child you're not able to write the full thing and everything. You focus and you break it down, and gradually you want to make it a little bit harder to go to the next level. And yeah, it's we might disagree, I might disagree on how schools sometimes do it, because I feel sometimes that the way they treat it is much more in a mechanical way than is in a practical way, especially talking about learning a language and everything. But it still is the breaking down part that I do agree on. We need to break down some of that part.
The cognitive load theory in pedagogics is kind of new. So I haven't seen any of my kids' school books that actually use these things properly. This last example from the book that I want to take is if you have those extra information squares in a text, like if you've seen kids' school books, if they're the same where you live, or if you remember it from growing up, often it was like a quite boring text. And then they had some, did you know that? Or something that was not actually on topic, but topic adjacent, but that would never come on a test, but was like there to spark your interest. So for a student or a school kid reading this text, if they can read all of it and the extra part and still understand everything, then the level was too low. If they struggle understanding the text, the square between the extra text will be a distraction and make it harder for them to actually understand the real text.
So it's not working. That's
no,
what
it's
I'm
not
hearing.
working. Yeah, and I think we do this to ourselves as well. So
Say more.
we don't carefully think about what we do to make our job harder.
Right.
And just because
I
it works, then with all these extra stuff weighing us down, what that means is that our base level is too low.
I really like that. I've seen it. We talked about multiple kind of challenges. I have a son who is dyslexic, and for example, a lot of the children's books, they want to make it easier or nicer to read, and then they add all kinds of colors. For a dyslexic person, that's awful. That's actually even more distractive. And it was interesting to see that many people advised us, yeah, read these books because he will like to read these books. No, you're completely not understanding. That's actually making things worse. It's all these distractions for a dyslexic child. It's like, give me a more simple text that is easier to read with a better font and everything. That's what is needed. Not every word in a different color and with text boxes everywhere and that's what I also see, and I really like that you put that out. Is that the school books these days they have all kind of colors, all kinds of distractions, and yeah, they're meant to make it interesting, but for the people who struggle most, it's worse. And for a lot of others, it's distractions, or it just tells you like, okay, maybe you scale down the text to make it easier, whatever. But it's not. Um, I think it should at that Eckstein that said, if you make something, what's it? How is it said anymore? If you make a one size fits all, it doesn't fit anyone.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. We make a text especially for everyone, for all childs, and we try to make it attractive, and maybe that's actually the opposite. You are a nice example. You talked about the book. Okay, you say, for me the books work best in the audio version, and so that is a different version. It's the same text, but it's written in a different way. And maybe depending on what tool you're using, you might listen to a different kind of voice, an automatic voice, or a male voice, or a female voice, or a different speeds, or whatever. And I like to read more on a Kindle, and these are different kind of things. The book is the same, but it's different kind of formatting for different kind of people, I think.
Yeah. So there's this making things fit the people that are actually the people who are going to use it.
We're going back to user design.
Yeah. But also there are some things that make it worse for everyone, because even though if our brains work a bit differently, the basic structure is the same. So, for example, if you can transfer words into sounds, so if your reading ability is on the level that you see a word and then you hear it in your head or something equivalent to that, if you then simultaneously have it read to you, it actually clutters your working memory, because then you have like conflicting stuff coming in. So it clashes. The sounds in your head and the sounds from your ears are making it worse. And this is true for everyone.
Yeah, I so recognize that. And yeah, I didn't think about that. And some people tell them that this is working better for them, and it never worked for me. I can't read and listen at the same time to the same book, and it's never. I used to think it was the wrong speed or whatever, and I'm glad to hear that there is some things about that.
And the thing there is that you have to have the phoneme thing working. So for some people with the dyslexia, where the decoding doesn't really work well because of dyslexia, then it can help because you get that support. But yeah, so but it has to do with brain structure.
I really like that part. For me, I recognize also some people like when they want to how's it called, when they want to focus. Some people with ADHD and others, they say like to have music so that they can focus. But then again, it depends. If there's lyrics, then people start to listen to the lyrics. So either you need to have music without lyrics or some other kind of thing. And people, we really need to adapt it. And some people don't always understand that environments make a huge impact on how
Yeah.
we are and how we think things.
So
Thank you.
make it
It's
work for
it's
individuals. Yeah.
one
But
book,
I
but
want to
so many
stress
things.
I want
Yeah,
to stress
go
the thing though that there are some things that make all of us work slower.
on.
And just because we think that it works as it is, it's because we don't know what we could actually do if we got it better.
I think that sums it up very nicely. Is that there's not I would say not enough research about what we're doing, how we knowing ourselves, and maybe even saying a little bit to people like you probably did some research is maybe the wrong word, but you've learned a lot about yourself, how your body works, and I think because of that you understand a lot better what you need, and many of us, we've never done that.
And I did take 1 year of behavior science at university as well. So I kind of cheated a
There's
bit.
that too. What cheated? It's yeah, it's you
Yeah.
maybe you didn't do it by design for where you needed to do, but yeah, it helps at that level, of course. I
But
want
yeah.
to move to that next question, if that's okay with you. And
Yeah.
that question is, what's a question that you think I should also ask you? What question? Yeah.
I think we talked about most of the stuff. We've talked a lot actually. So there's probably something you could have asked me, but we're over the time and I'm starting to get tired. So
Well,
yeah.
that's maybe just for the people who don't know that. Before we started, you said also because of your ADHD and everything that there might be a time that your brain starts to shut off and that it's hard. I think also the music that was there before it was really distracting for you. I think that was kind
Yeah.
of hard as well. I was wondering at that time if we should stop the conversation and continue it at a later moment, but apparently it kept working. But I also think it took a lot of energy. So let's
Yeah.
skip that question and let's go immediately to who's the person that you want to invite next. Who do you think I should also talk to?
I have two thoughts. Like there's a lot talking of Kent Beck. I think you should talk to him if
And let
he's
me,
up
for
to
the
it.
few people that have never seen this person, here's Kent. We talked already a little bit or a lot about TDD and extreme programming, and he's that nice person who invented a lot of that. I think it's probably the person that we've talked most on the show with all these kind of different people. So many people talked about him, but nobody thought about inviting him. I'm really curious if he wants to make time, so I hope he does because I think he's a big inspiration for a lot of us. But could you say some more why you would like to invite him?
Because he's nice to talk to about stuff like this. It's and he's in a lot of forums, but I think that this relaxed format would probably work. And I think there's a risk that some people are so famous that people forget that they're human. I mean, you can be busy, of course, but I was part of arranging a conference once, or I arranged a conference. And then I started to go to speaker dinners and chatting with people after their talks. Even now when I go to conferences, I often talk to people afterwards. And they're really awesome people that love their job and love their topic. And they're also human and nice. And it would be a shame if Kent want to be on this show or this podcast, but wouldn't be invited because everyone seemed to think that he's too important to ask to talk about the
I get it. I get that. It's interesting, and there are indeed a number of people that yeah. Sometimes afterwards they say, "Oh, I could have thought about that," but probably already somebody invited us. Like, no, everybody thinks the same thing, and this is why I brought up. so many people talk about Kent and his ideas. He's an inspiration to a lot of us, and somehow nobody either dares to invite him or thinks about it. And that's and I really like what you say about the human part. Somehow, I've had the luck earlier in my life to be friends with a musician that at that moment had some brief part of fame, and people didn't always. Yeah, I've seen this person being completely ill and then needing to go on a stage and being, I see it really as a mess, performing. Nobody notices because that's his job, and that's what he's doing, and then going off ill and completely going to bed. And people don't always realize, hey, everybody can have a bad day. And well, if it's your job and for whatever reason you still think you can perform and you do that, we don't see the human side. You might have, I don't know, a big argument with your partner, and then you need to do a show, you need to do whatever. It's that human part. And well, I hope, and I hope people agree, that this show is actually showing a lot of other parts of people, that is not just pure the technical part. We talked about lots of different interesting things, but I also, it shows the human side of people. So in that sense, I'm also really happy that you wanted to invite him.
Yeah.
And you wanted to invite another, or do you want to add something about to that?
Yeah, he's one of the original signers of the manifesto, but hasn't stayed there. So there's a new book coming out that he is writing so that people can read it while he writes it. And so I also know that he's one of those who continues to grow. So it won't be a talk about what he used to do, but what he actually does right now.
Yeah, it's nice that you add that to it. His new book, Tidy First, I think is called. It's really wonderful to be subscribed to it. You can indeed go on the website, pay a little money. Well, pay some money to see him writing it. Getting an email, sometimes it's once every while, but sometimes it's multiple emails a week with new edits, new ideas, seeing it growing. And indeed, I really like that you state that he's a person that keeps growing, that keeps pushing himself, reinventing some of the things, coming back, rethinking, sometimes saying, I disagree with that, and then 10 years later, so actually I agree with my original part. And growing as a person is a nice example for many of us. Is that statement in the Agile Manifesto where what I forgot the exact same sentence, but it's like, okay,
responding to change.
no, it's the original part where we say we're writing software, or we're doing it and we keep doing it. So that second sentence. So before we go actually to the 8 or the 4 statements, and I think that it's I'll put it in there as well. But it's that for me, it's really Kent. Like, okay, I'm still doing it. He's one of these people who wrote the manifesto, who's still writing code. He's still doing that part. So it's not just, okay, I've now written, became famous with the manifesto, and now I'm well, no, he's actually cared about software from the beginning and still doing that.
And he cares about the software developers. It's about protecting the geeks, making the world better for the developers. And I think having that core thing is important. And that it's passion driven is also a reason to have him on. I mean, I think he likes to talk about things that he cares for, if he has time and energy. But yeah, you know. But
yeah,
the other person
we'll see that. Yeah, let's talk about the other person.
Andrea Golet, or Golet. I don't really know how to pronounce her name, but she's awesome.
That's her, I think. Yeah.
Yes, and when I first got her on my radar and started, we've talked a bit. It was the legacy code rocks, taking care of legacy code mending thing. But now she does empathy in tech, and empathy is a technical skill. I know that when JB Rainsberger recommended you to talk to me, it was about the empathy thing, and we haven't really talked that much about it, but I think it's good that we haven't, because you talk to her about it instead, because it's like her thing from the beginning. And how
So you delegate that part.
Yeah, I delegate it. She will do it better. And how the non-technical, the concept of being non-technical is so strange. It's so weird. People are not there's nothing as being non-technical. Everything can be described with logic. Emotions and logics, they're connected. One of the things that I'm happy about having figured out, do you know about nonviolent communication?
I do.
Do you know theory of constraints?
I do as well, yes. I have
Do you know
actually
that they're
tomorrow.
they're the
I
same
want to
thing?
say before
Or,
theory of constraint, there is I would say tomorrow, but of course it's recorded and it will go out later. But there is so a video with Thierry de Pauw that is published. Not tomorrow, but on Friday. What is it? The 28th of July. That will talk a lot about theory of constraints. So if people are more interested in that, they can see that. And you wanted to make the link between these two, I
yeah,
think.
they're basically the same.
Say more. How do you see that in the main?
Yeah, so it's about needs and meeting needs, seeing the other person's perspective, not compromising, but finding an actual solution by looking at consequences. So instead of doing this, I wish you would have done this because I need this. We build a current reality tree where we see why our needs are in conflict, and what logical part we would have to flip to make it work. It's not the goal theory of constraints with the bottleneck stuff, but the later thing Goldratt wrote in where he talks about conflict clouds and current reality trees and future reality trees. All that is very nonviolent communication.
I really like that you make the link, and even I would say the bottleneck part. Well, for me is also linked in the sense that we need to solve the biggest bottleneck first. And I think in nonviolent communication, we should also not focus on all the problems and everything. No, if I have a problem with you, we need to look at what's the biggest problem between our communication. Let's first solve that before we try to solve everything else. If there is a big conflict between us, and if I do it in a wrong way or whatever, nothing else will matter. And it doesn't matter that we need to solve that one little part. I think there I see the link. I've never seen it before. I make it explain as I understand it, but it's how thank you for making that link.
If I'm not coherent at the time and you still want to see how I thought when I was more clear and more better spoken, I have a post on it on my blog as well, when the giraffe builds a current reality tree. So, and it's a giraffe on the image. So you will probably be able to find it through tags and stuff. But yeah, so technical versus non-technical. It's not a thing. Andrea will explain it better than I do. She's awesome.
And I lost my camera again. This seems to be a problem today with lots of different kind of ideas. But while people are trying to solve it again, helping me out, I want to move to because, like you said, you feel like you have a hard time explaining yourself. If people want to reach out to you, what could be a good way of reaching out to you?
So chocolate-driven development, like in chocolate, and then driven development as all the other driven developments.
So that's the one, right? That's chocolate-drivendevelopment.com.
So there you can find everything. So I get a lot of spam, but I have an email address there. There's also a Calendly thingy. So if you want to talk to me, you can always try to book a chat. So
and find ways at the right
I'm
moment
on Twitter, but the
time.
Twitter is on my website. So it's like the access point is go to my website. And I hope if you I've added like short preview texts to my blog post as well. So I hope that it's easy to scroll and see if there's something that catches your eye.
I've one of these people that really like it's like you say, like you said earlier on, you try to write very small blog posts that are, well, very small, 300-400 words, so not the extremely long ones, that are really useful to learn very quickly, where I think you spend a lot of time, I don't know, tweaking it and writing it and finding the right words. And I'm one of these people that really like the way you write them, because it's like, okay, for me, when I read a book, when I read a blog post, let me say it differently. There's a lot of people that write blog posts and books because they want to look smart and they use very complicated words and all the things. And for me, your blog feels kind of the opposite. You take the time to digest it, to make it condensed, that I understand it. It's very clear. It might not be, you don't go in all kind of directions. You make very consistent way of writing something that it makes me feel as a reader like, hey, now I understand that. That's really cool. And then I can read some other things. So I really want to thank you for the time that you put into writing these, because I can think, well, I'm not such a good writer, and I envy when I read posts that you wrote. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I think it's one of the things that are easy for me. It is hard for most people. I don't only have things that are hard for me that are easy for most people. Some things are the other way around. And I try to write text as I write code. You want the small units with one purpose.
Yeah, but I don't know, maybe it's easier for you as well, but writing the small pieces of code is not always easy. Sometimes I need to write a long thing, and then the refactoring, it's like, okay, what's now the essence of my code? What is really important? And then maybe the rewriting takes much longer than the writing. But as we need to as I will read that code, or my friends or everybody else will read that code much more than just me typing it, I want to spend the time to make it readable. And that's how it feels when I read your blog. Maybe you write that in one way and it's very easy for you, but for me, it's that's a good use of your brain.
I also split posts sometimes when something is too big. I use a concept from cognitive load theory with pre-teaching. If someone is to understand this post, what do I need to write in another post to make them being able to understand it? Stuff like that.
Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I will put the link. I will put everything. Definitely also the book. That's the disadvantage of doing this, that I have lots of books that I want to read, but you definitely made a point for this book. So it was already, when you introduced me to it, or when you sent the email that you would talk about this book, I was already triggered, but I'm even more triggered now. So thanks for taking that time for all of these things. It's been wonderful. Like you said just before, it's kind of over your time for still feeling that that you can still say stuff, but at the same time, I feel very inspired. It was very clear for me right until the end. So I'm really happy that you took that time. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for letting me share the joy of knowledge. Or like, it's this that drives me.
I feel the energy from Sweden back to here. So thank you very much. And I really want to thank also JB for inviting you, because it's been a joy talking to you.
Tack.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.